We're holding now at the end of the Perek Arvi Pesachim. The Mishnayos and the Gemara speak at the end of the Perek what happens at the end of the Seder. The Perek goes through the Seder, and at the end of the Seder is the Afikoimen. Bezman shebeis hamikdash haya Chaim, the Afikoimen was the Korban Pesach, and now we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, we don't have a Korban Pesach. The Afikoimen is matzah. Last week, Parshas HaChodesh, we read in Parshas Boi, Legabi the Korban Pesach, the Pasuk says, Vim yimat habayis meyois biseh, meaning to say a person has a small family, 2-3 people in the family, and they're bringing you a Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach is going to be left over. You don't want to cause noiser, they can't finish the whole Korban Pesach. So there's a din of a Chabura, you can have more people join into the Chabura. What's the opposite? The Pasuk doesn't speak about the opposite of, let's say, a person has a big family. So if it's a size that the family works out with the kezesim plus and you can eat, that's okay. But what's if person has a big family and these literally kezayis mitzumtzum for every person, not enough for a person to have a full suda. And the din is, you're supposed to eat the Korban Pesach ala soiva, like it's mavur on the Mishnah Samach Tesam at Beis. When the Mishnah speaks about the Chagigah, the Mishnah says ubemuit, meaning to say is if there isn't enough of the Korban Pesach to fill a person up, and the Emma says the Makar is a Mechilta. The Mechilta already says that he's a din ala soiva. There's no Mishnah or Gemara to say he's a din ala soiva. It's a Mechilta. The Lashon HaMechilta, Dover Acher al Matzas im Reum Yechlu, sagt the Mechilta, Mekan Amru, HaPesach Nechal Achila Soiva. Ve'ein Matzu Mor Nechal Achila Soiva, this is din ala Soiva. The Rambam says that it's not a Chiyuv, it's a mitzvah min HaMufcher. Sagt the Rambam in Hilchos Korban Pesach, Perek Ches Halacha Gimel, mitzvah min HaMufcher Lechol Boser HaPesach Achila Soiva. HaKapanim is a din achila soiva. So if a person it's a small family and you have a whole animal to shear, so then it's achila soiva. But if it's everyone's only getting a kezayis, how do you accomplish achila soiva? So for that, we have the Chagigah that's brought Erev Pesach, the Chagigah Yudalit. That's not the Chagigah that we have learned this Zman in Mesechtes Chagigah, that these karbonis that you bring on Yom Tov, a Korban Chagigah, that's the Chagigah that's brought on Yom Tov. This Chagigah, called the Chagigah Yudalid, is just that there should be more meat, only if you need it. Like the Mishnah Taka says, that's why it's not Doiches Shabbos. You don't always need it. It's not always needed, the Chagigah Yudalid. If a person has enough meat from the Korban Pesach itself, you don't have to bring a Chagigah. So the Chagigah is brought that you should have enough to be able to be, that when you eat the Korban Pesach, it should be ala soiva. In Parshas Re'eh, when the Pasuk speaks about the Korban Pesach, so the Pasuk says, V'zavachta Pesach l'Shem Elokecha, tzoin u'bakar. What's tzoin u'bakar? A Korban Pesach can be brought from tzoin. What's bakar? You bring a Korban Pesach from bakar. So Rashi right away brings from the Sefri that bakar is referring to the Chagigah. The Chagigah. So it's very clear. Bizman shebeis hamikdash haya Chaim, we ate the Afikoimen. The Afikoimen was eaten ala soiva. The Korban Pesach. Why was it ala soiva? Not why, before the why. We'll get to the why in a minute. It was nechal ala soiva. How did we accomplish the ala soiva? By bringing a Korban Chagigah before. Very clear. What'd you say?
Your chef, why you have to bring Korban Chagigah, just not a chef?
Interesting shaila. Why dafka Chagigah, that it should be basar kachim? It's like a shlamim. Why can't you just eat any person in stamazay had basar? I hear the shaila, I don't know offhand. Why taka couldn't you have any basar? Or the emes says, if I remember now correctly, it could be taka I'm remembering from when we learned in Chagigah that could be you're right, that if let's say you had leftover other basar, then you could eat that, Taka.
Similar to the Shalmi something.
Right. Could be even if you have leftover kachim or chul, and I want to be ma'ayin afterwards. It could be Taka, you're right. But al kaponim, it's zicha not a chiv. If you don't need it, you can eat the Korban Pesach. But al kaponim, it should be ala soiva. You accomplish it by bringing the Chagigah. Very clear. Let's go into the reason why ala soiva. Why? Tosfos daf kuf chaf amar aleph. That's what we're holding now, more or less. We're finishing the perek. Tosfos says the reason why you need ala soiva is because he's a din in the Torah Vaiti. We just read it now in Parshas HaChodesh and Parshas Boi. He's a din at Torah ve'etzem le'sishberu boi. You're not supposed to break the bone of the Korban Pesach. And Memela, I'm just going to read the Lashon HaTosfos and Daf Ayin in Pesachim. Tosfos Daf Chaf we saw, but Tosfos Daf Ayin, Tosfos says, V'oimer riva, the mashma Yerushalmi, the reason why you need ala soiva, hainu midrabanan, even though we saw the Mechilta, Ki'ilu says maybe it's mashma even from a drasha, but it's a midrabanan, gzeirim mishum shviris etzem, not to break a bone, which we're all familiar with. But Zok Tosfos, he explains, Shibloi hoisa ba'ala soiva, what would have been? So maybe you would understand, you would mamish break the bone to get out stuff from the bone. But Tosfos says that if it wouldn't be ala soiva and you don't have enough meat from the Korban Pesach itself, Tosfos says, Shibloi hoisa ba'ala soiva, metoichshu rov, you're hungry, lechel abasar, shesava v'atzamis, memela it would break. Doesn't bedafka mean that you would go and break the bone to get the meat out from inside the bone. But if you need to get every little bit of piece of meat, so then you eat all the way up to the bone. So once you're eating the meat around the bone, you might cause to break the bone. So Mamela, the reason why it has to be ala soiva to eat the Korban Pesach ala soiva is not to break the bone. If we're speaking about this Indian, it's very important to mention the chinuch. What's taka the reason? The etzem le'sishberu boi, zok the chinuch, because it's not derech b'nei melachim to eat and break bones. It's more like a dog, a kelev that breaks bones, eats around the bone to break a bone. And us klal Yisrael b'nei melachim, so Mamela we always have to refrain and we have to act like b'nei melachim. But why dafki here zok the chinuch? Because right here now, going out of Mitzrayim, we went out from the Avdas of Mitzrayim. And we became now B'nai Malachim, we became a Klal Yisrael. Now's when we became B'nai Malachim, so now's when the din is, be careful when you eat the Korban Pesach, v'etzem le'sishberu boi, not to break the bone. But Frek Tosfos, right here on Daf Kuf Chof, Frek Tosfos, we eat the Chagigah before the Korban Pesach. Why? Why do we eat the Chagigah? So the Korban Pesach should be ala soiva, not to break any bones. Frek Tosfos. And what's about the Shitas Ben Tema? Ben Tema holds that the dinim that are by Korban Pesach are also by the Chagigah, that we bring Yud Dalet, which means he's also a din not to break the bone of the Chagigah. So Ibazoy, you're telling me you bring the Chagigah first, that it should be nechal ala soiva. What should be nechal ala soiva? The Korban Pesach, not to break a bone of the Korban Pesach. And what's about the Chagigah? Lefi ben Tema, the Chagigah also you can't break a bone. So Tosfos says that there's a chiluk between the Korban Pesach and the Korban Chagigah. Korban Pesach is a year within the year. So Tosfos says it's young, it's rach, it's soft, it's more olol, it's more that it's going to happen, that the bone is going to break by the Korban Pesach as opposed to the Chagigah. Practical. Really, the Chagigah also we don't want the bone to break, but it's not going to happen. The Korban Pesach it will happen, so that's why that's a din ala soiva. So that's reason number one, Shitas HaTosfos Kuf Chaf that we just learned. Tosfos says the reason why you eat the Korban, you bring a Chagigah before, is that it should be ala soiva. Again, there's no chiyuv for the Chagigah, meaning to say is, if you're anyways going to have it ala soiva, is very good. But the din ala soiva is a din in Korban Pesach not to break the bone. However, the Shitas HaRambam, the Rambam in Maitzah Karbonis, the Rambam says from the din of Lamashcha, it's a din by all Karbonis, by all Kachim, not to break a bone. It's a din. It's not only a din which we just said now. Rashi says it's Mehilchas Korban Pesach, not to break a bone, and like we explained, the Chinuch explain in Hilchas Korban Pesach. The Rambam says it's a din across the board. Zok the Rambam Peruk Yud Halacha Yud Aleph and Ma'aseh Karbanis Hoysa Lehem Achila Moetes. Any carbon that the Kahanim are eating, Oichlen Ima. Zok the Rambam, like you mentioned before, technically anything Oichlen Ima Chulin. Just make sure when you're eating the basar kachim, it should be ala soiva. You eat chulin v'truma kedei shetiyah nechelas ha'masoiva. Meaning to say is any karbonos that's eaten has to be ala soiva. And the emes is the Rashbam Kufyu Tesam Beis. We just learned it as well. Also, the Rashbam says when the Rashbam speaks about the din ala soiva, the Mishnah Kufyu Tesam Beis Ein Maftir Nachar Pesach Afikoyben. You're not allowed to eat after Afikoyben. Why you're not allowed to eat after Afikoyben? Because we want to make sure that when you eat the Afikoyben, you're full. The Afikoyben is supposed to be ala soiva. How do we ensure that you're eating the Afikoymen ala soiva? If you can't eat anything after Afikoymen, you'll make sure when you eat that Afikoymen that you're full already. You're supposed to eat it ala soiva. Hayos, you're not allowed to eat afterwards, so maybe you can eat it ala soiva. But not to confuse, we said before, Rashi says ala soiva, not to break the bone by Korban Pesach. The Rambam says he's a din by all kachim. All kachim, you're not allowed to break a bone. Lamashcha, it's not classy in kuhuna in kachim ever to break a bone. The Rashbam also, lefisha dino leachal b'seif ala soiva, to eat the Korban Pesach, and Rashbam says v'chein kol karbonos kedechsiv lamashcha legedula kederach shamalachim oichlem. The kahanim that are eating the kachim, they're eating from shulchan malachim, and it's not derech malachim to break bones. Samei, it's a din by all kachim. So bazoi Rabbi Sai, back to the kasha. What do we gain by bringing a Chagigah before the Korban Pesach? So the Korban Pesach should be ala soiva. And what's about the Chagigah? What do you mean the same teretz?
Oh, as if you don't remember the...
One second. Let me make it clear. Thank you for bringing the question up. 1 second. Lefi Rashi, the reason why you needed ala soiva is not to break a bone. So memela oibazoi frektoisvis. If you not to break a bone, and what's with Chagigah? The teretz is it's harder bones. But here, these are din in kachim, not because of breaking bones. These are din when you eat it, you're supposed to eat it ala soiva. Lamashcha to eat it ala soiva. So and it's a din by all kachim. It's a din by all kachim, for whatever the reason is, even if it's breaking bones, but it's a din by all kachim, not only a Korban Pesach that's a rach. So ibazoi, what do you gain by bringing a Chagigah before the Korban Pesach? So when you eat the Korban Pesach, it's ala soiva. And what's about the Chagigah? The Chagigah also you have to eat ala soiva.
So how do you ever eat a Korban?
Oh, you're asking very good. How do you ever eat a Korban ala soiva? So the Rambam Taka says, if the kohen gets a shlamim, he gets 18-ounce steak, so then it's taka ala soiva. But if he only gets a little bit of meat, zok the Rambam, you know what you do? The Lashon Rambam, zok the Rambam, hoisa achila moetes. So the Rambam says you taka right. You have to eat chulin with it, like you mentioned before. And you have to make sure that by the time you eat the kachim, you shouldn't eat it and you're still hungry. Chulin v'truma kedeshi ala soiva.
What's the point of the Chagigah? If someone has not enough kazesim from the Pesach and the Chagigah, so you have to bring a bigger Chagigah, or maybe a second Chagigah. The point is to not fall soiva. So also make sure there's your problem is that it's not going to be not fall soiva. So make sure everyone gets an 18-ounce steak from the Chagigah, or bring a bigger Chagigah. So you want to say like this. You want to say that the Chagigah Takad is also a din ala soiva.
You want to say these are din ala and a chanami taka. Tosfos asks, what happened to the ala soiva and the Chagigah? So Tosfos says you don't need. I just want to point out the reason that tzad why you don't need ala soiva in the Chagigah is because how it's mavur all over. You know why the Chagigah comes? So the Pesach should be ala soiva. Everything has to be ala soiva.
If you're eating a Chagigah ala soiva, is the Pesach not going to come up kilogasa?
No, so of course you have to make sure.
Soiva, and this could still be not considered not ala soiva?
So, you're saying like this, if you have to also eat the Chagigah ala soiva, so what happens with the Korban Pesach? And the Chanami, I think you could still eat a Kazayas exactly. After eating the Chagigah ala soiva, you could still eat the Kazayas of Korban Pesach ala soiva. But Akapanim, back to the Kasha, l'chayra, it sounds like the Chagigah is brought, so the Korban Pesach is eaten ala soiva, that you should eat it, not the Korban Pesach. You don't eat the Korban Pesach when you're hungry. And what's about the Chagigah? The Chagigah also is supposed to be ala soiva. All kachim is supposed to be ala soiva. Zokt Reb Chaim, in stencil, he says like this. This din that we saw on the Rambam, this din in kachim, that you're supposed to eat ala soiva, you're supposed to eat karbonos, kachim ala soiva, is only a din on the kohen when he has a chiyuv to eat. Meaning to say, I'll explain, a chatos, there's a chiyuv for the kohen to eat basar chatos. The Torah Kedosha says, the Lashon HaPasuk, va'achlu oisam asher kupar bahem, the kohen eats, ubaylim mischaprim. There's a chiyuv for the kohen to eat the chatos. However, shlomim, for an example, if the kohen eats it, he's makayim a mitzvah, but there's no chiyuv. Only when there's a chiyuv to eat basar kachim, then there's a din lamashcha. The Lashon HaRambam in Pirush HaMishnayos in Zvachim Perek Yud, the Rambam says, Ubakulam HaKehanim Rishon L'Shanas, we're not going to go into the din HaMishnah, but Zok the Rambam, Amar Achmana B'dvorim Shahakoyin Oichol, there's a din Lamashcha. Zok Reb Chaim, when there's a chiyuv, if there's a chiyuv to eat basar kachim, then there's a din Lamashcha, Dahainu, to eat it ala soiva. Chagigas Yodalit, there's no chiyuv. There's no chiyuv, it's not Doicha Shabbos, you don't have to bring it. If you're a small family, like we began the Shiur, and there's only a few people, and within the Korban Pesach itself, there's plenty of meat, you don't have to bring a Chagigah. There's no chiyuv for a Chagigah. So Mamela, there's no din ala soiva. What happened at the Korban Pesach? What's with the Korban Pesach? The Korban Pesach, there's a chiyuv. Avada is a chiyuv. There's a chiyuv on everybody to eat the Korban Pesach. So Mamela, the Korban Pesach, Rabbi say, even though the Korban Pesach is not even for a kohen, it's for Yisrael, but there's a chiyuv. There's a chiyuv to eat the Korban Pesach. Shlomim, there's no chiyuv to eat, not the kohen, not the Yisrael. Ma'ashekin the Korban Pesach, there's a chiyuv to eat. Memela what? Memela, there's a din ala soiva. So if we stop right here, just even if we stop, it's very clear. As we learned the end of the perek, there's a din to eat the korban. At the end of the seder, the afikoimin ala soiva. Rashi says the reason why to eat Tosfos says the reason why to eat ala soiva is not to break the bone of the Korban Pesach. It's a din miyuchid by Korban Pesach. Chagigah, so Tosfos says we're not concerned about Chagigah, but it's only by Korban Pesach. However, the Rambam that holds that it's a din by all kachim to eat ala soiva. So why dafka the Korban Pesach and why not the Chagigah? The teretz is the general din of ala soiva is only a din when there's a chiyuv. Chatos, there's a chiyuv. Shlomim, Chagigah, there's no chiyuv, so there's no din ala soiva. Ma'ashe'ekin Korban Pesach, there is a chiyuv, and maybe it's ala soiva. I hear what you're asking. You want to say there's a din of noisar, so that should be a chiyuv to eat. Is it a chiyuv dafka on you? You could give it to other people. There's a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah, but there's no chiyuv. just on a Maimer Amusker, I'm going to say it a little bit kitzer, and even if you don't get it, we still have Klar the Shiur, and I just want to go to the part 2. But on this note of the Shitas HaRambam, that by all Kachim, only when there's a Chiyuv, there's a din of to eat it ala soiva, the Briskerov, the son of Rabbi Chaim, goes along with the same Yisoid, and he is machalak between Kachim and Kachim Kalim. Kachim, there's a Chiyuv. Chatos is Kachim, not Kachim Kalim. Korban Pesach, which is Kachim Kalim. The teretz is it's an exception because he's a Chiyuv. But the Briskerov says this is all very geschmack lefi the Shitas HaRambam. Shitas Rashi holds that even Kachim Kalim and even the Bailam and even Yisrael, there's always a Chiyuv. Always a Chiyuv. So then you don't have this teretz. This teretz is only if you say that only when there's a Chiyuv. So you could say Dafka the Korban Pesach and not the Chagigah. But the Briskerov explains something very geschmack. We just passed now Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the day of Akamas HaMishkan, is Eser HaToros. There were 10 things that happened on that day, the day of Rosh Chodesh, the day of Akamas HaMishkan. In the list, it's interesting, there's actually a question what the 10 things were. One of them, the Ravid says, one of them is Achilas Kachim. However, Rashi has a different gersa, and Rashi says the din mechitza by Kachim, not Achilas Kachim. Explains the Briskerov, what's the shaila between the Ravid and Rashi? Is it Achilas Kachim or the din mechitza? We're not going to go into the din mechitza, but there's a din mechitza of Kachim where you eat which Kachim. Zok the Briskerov, the Machloikis Rishonim, in which of the 10 Ataris, if it was Kachim, Zok the Briskerov, the Ravid learns like the Rambam we just said before, that only Kachim, there's a Chiyuv to eat. Memela, only when the Mishkan, Hakamas HaMishkan, that's when we started Kachim. You couldn't bring Kachim on a bama. It only came about now with the Mishkan. So Memela, there was a Chiddush now of a Chiyuv to eat Kachim. Told the Mishkan there was never a Chiyuv to eat Basar Kachim. So one of the 10 items is Achidus Kachim. There's a Chiyuv. Ma'ashe'en kein Rashi lishi tasei, that any basar kachim, no matter what, even kachim kalim, there's a chiyuv. So there was no chiddush now by the Akamas HaMishkan. It's true, now came about basar kachim, but there was always a mitzvah and a chiyuv to eat. So Mele Rashi has a different girsa from the Asara Taurus. To conclude, so what do we have so far? We have clearly that there's a din to eat Korban Pesach ala soiva, either dafka Korban Pesach, or it's a kachim digedin. But let's get it very clear. We should still be zoicha this Leila Seder, like we say the Tefillah v'noichal min hazvachim, that's referring to the Korban Chagigah, umin ha'psachim, the Korban Pesach. You're supposed to eat first the Chagigah. That's clear. Even we spoke a little bit kachim, we went a little around here and there, dine kachim, but that's clear. You eat the Chagigah first, so you should eat the Korban Pesach ala soiva. That's clear. Even if you missed everything till now, one thing is clear. We learned the end of the parak. There's a seder. You eat Chagigah, and then you eat the Korban Pesach. So the Korban Pesach should be ala soiva. Let's learn together a Mishnah right at the end of the parak. That's mamash we're learning now. We're finishing up. Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph Amar Aleph. Zok the Mishnah. Birch Birchas HaPesach. You made the bracha on the Korban Pesach. That bracha patters the bracha of the Chagigah. Potar Eshel Zevach Ta'im the Chagigah. The other way around, not. And then there's a machlok. Rabbi Kiva says that neither bracha patters. But what's the pashtus, the Mishnah? Do you understand the Mishnah? that if you come to the Seder and you eat the Korban Pesach first, and you made a bracha on the Korban Pesach, it does pater the bracha on the Chagigah, it doesn't pater, you make a bracha. We're not so familiar with all these brachas, but you make a bracha. The Rambam brings it clearly. You make a bracha before you eat the Korban Pesach. Asher Kiddishanu, Zok the Rambam, V'achakach mevarach baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech el asher Kiddishanu mitzvah v'tzivaro al achilas hazevach. You make a bracha on the Chagigah. You make a bracha on the achilas Korban Pesach. But the Mishnah says that if you eat, you're eating the Pesach first, and you made a bracha on the Korban Pesach, the bracha of the Korban Pesach paters the Chagigah. Does pater, it doesn't pater, machlokes tanoim. The shaila is, we just finished spending 25 minutes explaining why the Chagigah comes first, because the Korban Pesach should be ala soiva. So how do we understand over here that you ate the Korban Pesach first and then the Chagigah? You have to eat the Chagigah first, so the Korban Pesach should be ala soiva. So in the Rishonim, Sai Rabbeinu Menoach and Sai Da'ar Zerua, there's a difference. There isn't the time now to go into the chiluk between the two Rishonim in various sides, but they both go along the lines to say that of course you ate the Chagigah first and then the Korban Pesach. The regular Seder that you're supposed to do. This whole discussion here is a hilchas brachas to geshaila. It's a hilchas brachas, meaning to say, you ate the Chagigah. Either now you're eating the Korban Pesach, or you made a bracha on the Chagigah. You made a brachas Korban Pesach on the Chagigah. That's the shaila if you yotza. In other words, again, I'm not going to go into detail. The Zerua understands that you're making the bracha after you ate it already, or a whole discussion. But how they understand, avada you're eating it keseder, means you're eating the Korban Chagigah first and then the Korban Pesach. But what the Mishnah means, that you're making a bracha on the Chagigah, but not a birchas Chagigah, birchas Korban Pesach. And for that, there's a one shita that says you're yotze, one shita you're not yotze. Good. So if you stop right here, it's very geschmack, because Taka, we was talking the whole morning that is a seder. You have to first eat the Chagigah and then the Korban Pesach. You're Taka eating in that order. However, the Tzlach says a moiridige chiddush, and with this I'm going to conclude. The Tzlach learns no. The Tzlach says that really it's Taka talking about, the Mishnah is talking about you ate the Korban Pesach and then the Chagigah. And that's what it means. Birach ala Pesach means you ate the Korban Pesach first and then the Chagigah. What's going on over here? These are Seder, you have to eat the Chagigah first and then the Korban Pesach. Zokt Tzlach, a Chiddush Gadol, that the din is, he brings a Rambam, the Rambam in Halacha Tes, it's a moirid de gezach. A person for sure starts off his Seder with eating basar Chagigah. Then he eats the Korban Pesach. Then Zok the Rambam. Person can continue after eating the Korban Pesach, he can continue eating more, whatever you want, more Chagigah. Ubelvad, the last kezayis should be the Korban Pesach. This is moiridik. Meaning to say is, it's not like what we understood up until now. You eat Chagigah the whole night, and then the main thing is you end off with the Korban Pesach. You eat Chagigah and then Korban Pesach, so the Korban Pesach's ala soiva. However, there's another din, there's a din that the last kezayis you eat has to be Korban Pesach because of ala soiva. So Memela what? Memela, it's true. What happened is over here you ate the Chagigah first. You forgot to make a bracha on the Chagigah. Now you're eating the Korban Pesach. Zok the Mishnah, if you eat the Korban Pesach and you make a bracha on the Korban Pesach, a part is the Chagigah that you're going to go and eat soon again. Memela is like this. Memela, the feeder for the Rabbeinu Menoach and the Da'ar Zerua, how they learn it's a hilchas brachas to geshaila. Like the Marsham, Reb Shalom Tradran explains, their gears in the Mishnah was Birech Birchas HaPesach. That's what we have. In other words, it's a bracha de Geshayla. Avad you eating Keseder. First you're eating the Chagigah and then the Korban Pesach. It's just you're mixing up in the brachas. Mashenking the tzlach doesn't have the girsa of Birech Birchas HaPesach. Birech Al HaPesach, the bracha of Chagigah. Like how we explained to him that tzlach moiridig in the Welt. You start off with Chagigah, that everybody agrees. Then you eat Korban Pesach. Then you can continue eating more Chagigah as long as you end off with the Korban Pesach. So the Mela, it's a brachas de Geshayla, but it's talking about you made the bracha on when you're eating the Korban Pesach, could have part of the Chagigah. The second time you can eat a Chagigah, could have part of that Chagigah. So just to sum up, the takeaway of the whole Shiur is very clear. There's a din to eat the Korban Pesach ala soiva. Either it's a din dafka by Korban Pesach not to break a bone, or it's a din by all kachim. But regardless, there's a din ala soiva. That's why the Korban Pesach is eaten at the end, so you make sure that you're full by the time you eat the Korban Pesach. It should be ala soiva. And we bring the Chagigah before. It's not a chiyuv, but it helps us should you need to eat the Korban Pesach ala soiva. And Memela, the last Mishnah, Kuf Chaf Aleph, Kepshuta, means that you're eating it in order. The Tzlach says, not in order just means, of course you have to start with the Chagigah, because Avada, you have to have the Korban Pesach ala soiva. Nervos, you eat the Chagigah to have the Korban Pesach ala soiva. Then you can go back to the Chagigah, ubelvad, that you end off the Seder with a Korban Pesach, with a kazayis of the Korban Pesach. We should talk about zoicha, like what we say, it's a tefillah by the Leila Seder, but we should be zoicha v'noichal min ha-zvachim u'min ha-psachim. Yet this year, Abba Aleinu L'Toiva, have a wonderful Shabbos.
Beautiful as